you simultaneously have women discussing their social rights and their needs for freedom and agency and self-determination in a way that wasn't normalized when I was growing up. But you also have the rise of these aesthetics that are going on.
Like the clean girl aesthetic or the soft girl or the soft life and the baby girl. Growing up, I was raised to believe that what we are, how we look and how we perform is very much linked to the function we have in society as women.
My bet is that Gen Z/Gen Alpha are going to look at me and be like, listen, it's not that deep. It's a makeup look. It's an outfit look. It's not that deep. Do we need to define feminine identity?
What do you think?
I think we do.
I've been wondering what you think about
but with a caveat. So I don't think we need to define feminine identity within some sort of rigid structure of what it means to be feminine. But I do think that we as in women and we as in our community need to define shit for ourselves, lest it be defined by others on our behalf, as it has been for generations.
Have you gone through this process personally?
Of defining feminine identity?
Defining and redefining what that means to you.
Yes.
Tell us more. Thank you for answering.
You're welcome.
Explain.
You're welcome.
What? Why? How?
Why? Because I think I was raised with a very misogynistic definition of femininity, and amazing, beautiful, elegant women in my life, but who kind of internalized those misogynistic ideals of what the feminine is. And it always felt inauthentic to me. Like I was a costume I would put. It was a mask that I had to put on from literally when I was like 3 years old, and there's guests in the house and Baba go entertain the guests and you have to wear the dress and you have to put the smile and you have to do your hair like this and you have to, and I was like the hostess with the mostess in the way that I was taught to be. I was trying to do a rhyme with mostess, toastess, something. So
what are the misogynistic, like, can you explain what, because you said it in an interesting way, like
feminine identity was very much performative. It was very much about how you are seen by others. It was about wearing certain clothes, specifically maybe dresses or clothes that are like tailored in a certain way or that highlight or hide certain things, certain colors. It was about, again, like this mask and this performance that you're putting on of like smiling and taking care of people. And these traditional roles that are usually placed and adopted by women in families, to where you're hosting and you're getting people the drinks and you're making sure everyone is happy and you're holding good conversation and you're moving through life in a way that is very much focused on like appeasing the expectations placed upon you and what you're supposed to be going through, and I think that for me was just very heavy. You were supposed to look a certain way and act a certain way and believe certain things and speak in a certain way and entertain people. And it wasn't just that I was told to like go be myself and be kind and polite. It was much more profound to that, and much more profound in like even just the innate like instincts that you have to comfort other people and appease other people and make sure that they accept you or that they feel at their most comfortable. And so you have to kind of sacrifice or accept behavior towards you that also might not be necessarily like welcome or appropriate. And you're trying to always make other people comfortable by sacrificing or kind of ignoring the needs that you hold within yourself. For me, that was a lot of what defined femininity, and then all of the superficial stuff that came with it. The heels, the bags, the shoes, the makeup, the hair, the waxing and the shaving and the tweezing and the plucking and the bleaching and the coloring and the until like my late 20s. There was this shift, and there was very much also a two-sidedness to where I felt very out of place, and I could mask and perform very, very well in that space, but it wasn't an authentic representation of who I was in the world or what I wanted. And although I could love it and I could admire it, the women that were naturally in that space and behaved that way, I just felt it was always a struggle. I felt like I just didn't want to dress like that. It didn't feel good. I stopped like being comfortable appeasing people's behaviors, you know, and trying to comfort men who behaved like really inappropriate with me, or who had, you know, and me just doing things to be polite and to make them comfortable, instead of placing boundaries for myself or honoring what I need or what I want. So I had to completely redefine what that feminine was for me.
Growing up, I was raised to believe that what we are, how we look, and how we perform is very much linked to the function we have in society as women. It serves a purpose to uphold by all like the systems that we always talk about, the patriarchy, the social norms, the gender roles, all of those things. But it's not just, you are just a human that is existing and that has these choices that they can make for how they speak and how loud they laugh and when they go out and what they wear and how they look and what makeup they put on or no makeup and how they style their hair. And everything and every choice you make means something. It's either you're conforming to what people want you to do and the role they want you to play in society as like a functioning of the entire system and women within it, or you're going against that. So you're outside of it, you're rebelling, you're non-conformist, you're trying to be like a tomboy, and it's labeled, and it's with all the negative connotations of that label. And it's from the littlest, most insignificant or seemingly insignificant thing to like the biggest choice that you can make in your life as a woman, in your everyday life, in your planning for your future. I also agree with what you said a lot about like the idea of the role of that and the function that women play is like to serve others, to appease others, to make others comfortable, to provide for others, to care for others. It's always like this outside of yourself.
Yeah.
So everything I was when I was a little girl was a product of all of those mindsets.
Yeah.
So I had to like, I was dressed in these like scratchy like white dresses, you know, with like scratchy stockings and tight white shoes, and like hair had to be done a certain way and it had to be straightened and it had to be like controlled, and I had to look like a doll, as close to a doll as possible, whatever like idealized image of women and girls in society is. The purity, like the cuteness, the quietness. It's not something I thought about much when I was younger. But I remember in university, like my best friend that I made when I landed back in Egypt and started going to university was very different than me. Like we're similar in so many ways, but she's also very, very different. And she had a lot more space and a lot more freedom for whatever reasons to just be herself in a lot of ways that I had learned to restrict. And one of the easiest ways and most visible ways was like her laugh.
Oh.
She has the loudest, most like throw your head back and like look up at the sky and just let it all out. Super loud. The kind of laugh that when I was very young, I was like told repeatedly, "La, ma تعليش صوتك," like that's too loud. Your voice is too, like, you can't be too loud. You have to be soft spoken and your laugh has to be like demure and cutesy and كده. So seeing her, or you can laugh, but if you're gonna like be laughing like that, crying, laughing, it's like something that happens in like a family space with your brothers or cousins or siblings وكده. But if you're out in public وقاعدين بقى with people and there's the gathering of some kind, like you cannot just be like, like that's what the men do. And I just remember that being one of like the very early women in my life that I saw like not giving a fuck how loud her laugh was. And it was actually like, I always tell her this, if I had to give a speech of some kind where I was like honoring her and our friendship, that's one of the first things I would say. That really taught me to throw my head back and laugh and not give a fuck and forget what I was told about what laughing should look like for like a proper woman.
Wow.
That's just one example.
Yeah.
I could think of like 1,000 more. But this was like an early thing. One of the things that made me start questioning well, if she can do it, like, so can I. And what are the other ways that I'm holding myself back and being like cowering a bit and being like stifled and restricted in my life?
I wonder if it also, if whatever the elements are that we're being socialized to embody, sometimes they come very naturally to people. Like it feels like some people, it's a very authentic alignment with their own self-expression. But for those of us who don't align with it authentically, like it becomes more and more stifling.
What do you mean? It's a bit vague.
Like I also felt incredibly stifled in so many other ways in that I ended up embodying later in life, and noticing also that my friend would laugh out loud by herself all the time. Like she would just make herself laugh. She had the most beautiful laugh. I kind of forgot until you said that. And I go, oh yeah, that's so true. I remember being 21 and realizing that I could hear her laughing.
Yes.
At a YouTube video from a different room. And I'm like, wow, she just does that alone. And now at 35, I do that all the time. I crack myself up. I make myself laugh. But it took me years of becoming comfortable with that idea and actually realizing that I had withheld that, or the idea of like holding back sneezes, for example.
Yes.
Like
this is like actual thing.
And that's like medically really bad for you. Or I have a friend of mine whose grandmother taught her how to sneeze in a delicate, dainty way. And now she can't unlearn it. So she literally will sneeze like this.
It is cute.
Like a tiny, tiny little bird that just flew into a window. Like that's what I picture. And it's like a little cartoon thing. And I'm like, what the fuck is that? Is that how you sneeze? And she goes, yeah. I'm like, wow. I know the medical science behind holding back sneezes. So I try my best not to do that.
Yeah.
And I still catch myself doing it in certain situations because I just...
Yeah. What did you mean by it comes naturally to some people? What comes naturally?
Well, I feel like some people's natural behavior aligns with whatever is expected from women in a patriarchal society.
Okay.
Like, for example, some people are just much more naturally soft-spoken.
Right.
Women are supposed to be soft-spoken. We're not supposed to be loud and boisterous and extemporaneous and like very, I don't know, animated when we talk. We're supposed to be reserved and like delicate, and everything is soft-spoken and everything is well thought out and everything is calmer. And some people genuinely are like that. And so it doesn't, maybe it's not as much energy for them spent to behave in that way. For me, it takes so much to have to be like, oh, I have to adjust the volume of my voice and the tone of the way that I want to say it. And I'm super like passionate and like very outwardly expressive with how I am. So even in situations that were social, like I have to, okay, well, how am I going to say this in like a calmer way? Or like, don't interrupt, and I have to wait to speak. And if I want to say it, I have to say it in a, that was so like, I had to do mental gymnastics and physical gymnastics to actually contort into the defined way of being. And I didn't realize how much energy that was really, really taking for me. But just as a clear example, the way that I'm currently behaving on this podcast, on this show, would have never been acceptable for a woman. Or like, you know, I know my dad doesn't watch the show, but somebody who does is going to send this to him. But he would go nuts knowing that his daughter is sitting here, socks off, legs crossed, wearing sweatpants and a baggy sweater, you know, with a half-eaten chocolate bar like in her hand, talking to her best friend, recording a piece of valuable content for her company. And this is not only a feminine space, but this is also a professional space. And this goes against like everything that he would have wanted for me to do. And my hair is not done, and my, you know, khalas, I did put like lipstick today. So
no, I want to say like to a lot of people, hearing you say this, to them you seem, or they would be like, what do you mean? Like that's very feminine.
Oh, but then what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah, I mean
here's feminine. You know, ready? I'll switch. Like I'll switch. It's like also... this is what feminine should be.
But who said?
The society, men. I'll tell you who said. Who said? My father, my aunt, my mother, my other aunts, my uncles, their wives,
the Baweb,
the drivers, the
teachers,
educators, my
your
teachers at
teachers.
school, Elisa, who were British, by the way. This is how women sit with their legs crossed behind them. My grandmother, your hand is here. You're on the edge of the seat. You don't sit all the way back. You don't cross your knees. You cross your ankles, and you cross them at an angle because that's how your legs look nice. And you sit with your back straight, and you tilt your head a certain way, and you smile in a certain way that is just like really endearing.
You're tripping me out.
Is it weird?
See you like
It's called fucking. You can't see me like this.
No, like
You
no,
can't
Azzy,
see me
I
like
mean,
this.
this is not you. Like to me, this is so outside of that.
Okay,
That I know.
this is literally like who I had to be and become every time there was humans.
Yeah.
Like there were humans that weren't in my nuclear family that came around, and my dad had a very social, public, busy life growing up. So there were always people around in the house.
I think, and we're talking a lot about how we sit and stand and smile and dress وكده, but there was a really big difference that I noticed early on in the way men, like boys were raised and girls were raised, because I have two older brothers, but I saw it all around me as well. There's this thing of like teaching you from a young age how to serve people and how to respond to requests. Okay, and this really gets to me. So I hate this so much because now when I see it, I'm like, no, someone else go get that glass of water. There's this thing of like, ممكن تجيبي لي كوباية مية? Like, just get me a glass of water. And you're like 7, مثلا. Like, sure. I mean, you're closer to the kitchen, but it could be by your father, your brother, your uncle, whatever. Like in my 20s, I was told, by the older women in my life that this is a way to like, I don't know how to describe it. It's a way to get you used to serving other people and hosting and responding to requests of people around you. So it starts with like, get me a glass of water from the kitchen, or can you pass me the remote? Intentionally, not because of course I can ask you, can you pour me some tea? Like that's normal. But as an intentional like upbringing for women, for girls, socializing you to respond to those kinds of requests. And then it becomes like, oh, make tea for us and for people visiting. And if you're like in like 10 to 12, you're like, go with your mom, go make tea. All the girls go make tea. All the teenage girls, you all go make tea. Do you know how to make coffee? مش بتعرفي تعملي قهوة؟ ما تعلمتيش؟ لا لازم تتعلمي عشان لما تتجوزي وعشان when your fiance comes with his family to ask for your hand in marriage. And there's all this joking and like small banter, and all of this is to get you to at one point become capable enough and have that life skill that's very important for women to have, or expected as part of the feminine performance, is to get up and make tea and serve people with a smile and know how to set the tea on the little, where to place the handle of the teacup on the plate and then to put a little spoon next to it, and how to serve and not make sound when you're stirring the sugar, because if it goes like clank, 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 it's like احنا مش في قهوة, we're not at a coffee shop.
Oh, wow.
Like كده. ايه ده بتعملي ايه؟ لا مش كده.
Oh, I've never heard that one.
Softer. And that's also very English because we were colonized by the British, and this is what they taught us. Those motherfuckers. That you have to like, the tea and the cake and the biscuits and then the plate that the cake goes into and the little serving spoon and where to put all those things. That's besides about hosting dinner parties and fitars and suhoors and all of those things. It starts from that very initial like روحي قومي هاتي كوباية مية, in the intentional way of I'm teaching you how to be. I don't know, like for my parents, مثلا, they were amazing people. I love the way they raised me. But this is just an inherent thing in the culture and in society that they didn't even realize what they were doing. Or if they did realize what they were doing, they thought that this is how you raise women, like good, proper women. And everything falls into your future. It's so when you get engaged, when you get married. كده.
But you're saying it's intentional, but it's not always conscious. It's intentional because we are intentionally raising people to behave that way. We want women to learn to make tea and coffee because part of their expected role is to serve the tea and the coffee. But it's on such a subconscious level that you're not sitting there going, oh, I want to like oppress my daughter or
Yes.
my, you know, so, and this is how I'm going to do
Yes.
it. No, you
They're
have
not
no idea.
intentionally teaching you subservience, but
Yes.
that's what they are.
But that's what it
teaching you.
is.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it even, you know, I think about consent a lot now, especially with my nieces and my nephews, and how normalized it was to be like, طيب قوم تبوسي عمك هونيك.
Yes.
Okay, but it's not really my ammo. It's like, or my khalo. It's like a ammo. It's an uncle or an auntie or a whatever.
Some man.
And I don't feel like doing that.
Yeah.
But not once was it ever like a thing where I ever thought ever to say, La, ya baba,
Yeah.
like, no, it's like, sure, ammo, hi, and make a joke and compliment and appease the ego immediately, because that's just what the men are supposed to have from us. That's how I'm taught to engage. And in doing that, and whatever they do, they can hug me, they can give me a kiss, they can put their hand somewhere that I don't think is necessarily comfortable, but it's just, khalas, I've gone and I've exposed myself. And what is that kind of subconsciously ingrained within us? Essentially, the idea of like subjugating your own needs, your own red flags, your own guidance system, for me, was part of adopting and learning to have the feminine identity back then, you know?
Right.
And I had so many women around me growing up that embodied the patriarchal ideal woman. My mom was like a beauty pageant queen. There were multiple beauty pageant queens working in my dad's office. We had a publishing company. We had a lot of like models that would come for photo shoots, and we had like celebrities, and we had beautiful, like the misses, when there was a Miss Universe and they would do all the tour of the different countries in the world, and they would stop in Lebanon or they would be in France. There would be like a dinner at our house, and my dad would be like, شوف البنات يا بابا, شوفيهم.
Yeah.
This is woman. This is the elegance you want in your life. Like, this is who you need to be like. And these are beauty queens. I mean, they train
how to sit.
their whole life how to perform this identity of feminineness so perfectly. And I was just like so distant from it. I was always a bit goofier. I was always a bit lankier. Like, I didn't have as much like smooth flow.
The grace.
The grace and the poise that these women have. And I don't know if it's innate or if it was just taught to them to such a degree through things like ballet, which is like the acceptable dance for girls at a young age. This is back like when we were growing up.
Piano,
or like playing piano. Both of those things I had to do, right? And my grandmother was like a model in America in the 1950s who used to be like the Betty Crocker, like housewife thing, and a piano teacher, and her daughters all did ballet and art and singing and all the classic traditional things expected for young little girls to do. So that was just inherently like passed on. But I don't play piano. I don't dance ballet. Like, I hated it. I hated all of that stuff. I always used to apologize overtly for so many things that ultimately came down to the root of, you're expecting a behavior of me as a woman and I'm not meeting it.
It's interesting when you said ballet, you reminded me of like a contradiction kida in what I was saying about the upbringing, because at the same time, I wanted to dance ballet. And my dad was like, no, you should learn karate. I'm like, what? No, why?
Amazing.
Why? He's like, kida. And he took me, and I wanted to like dance. I wanted ballet or jazz or tap, or I never did those things. And instead he's like, go like kickboxing or like karate or something like that. And I didn't want. So I didn't do any of the things. But in his head, he's like, you should learn how to fight. And then having two older brothers that were very bad, always in trouble, always breaking things and ripping their pants and like fighting each other and coming back with holes in their shoes and everywhere. And then being at home with me, they would like rough around, like that rough play. And my mom would not want me to partake in that. But my dad would be like, if they hit you or they push you, push them back. Hit them back, punch them back, you know, and they would go cry and I would get in trouble, but he'd still be like, it's fine. Or like, he'd teach me like, you know, like if they're trying to like wrestle you too much, just like pinch them really hard here, bring them down. And I did that. And then my brother went and cried to my dad and he's like, I guess I have to punish you. He's like, I'm going to punish you, but what you did was right. So there was those, like, it's so funny because doesn't that encapsulate both the things we're expected to be in society? Like, this feminine, like soft-spoken, gentle, nurturing creature that's kind of gliding through life. But also society is so dangerous for women and violence is everywhere that you also have to learn how to be aggressive and to defend yourself and to be on the lookout all the time and to be hyper aware of your surroundings. So the idea that both were true in my upbringing, that's like such a contradiction. I wonder, like, where's the balance in that, you know? At the same time, boys are just allowed to be whatever they want to be. There is pressure on them also to like not cry and to be men and kida, but they're not like necessarily raised in a way to restrict their actions from the effects they have on society or the function they play in society.
Yeah, I feel a lot of men's most like heavy constricting programming for what masculinity is comes later in their life, later in development, once they become teenagers and their voice starts breaking. And then you have responsibilities of like, whatever, all of the cultural assumptions of what men are supposed to take on as being providers and protectors, but also perpetrators of so many things. Like there's just a lot of things that are then taught to men much later. But when they're younger, it's very much like, oh, boys will be boys. If they fall, if they get hurt, if they break, if they cross boundaries, if they make mistakes, عادي. But girls from the youngest age, like literally think about it. As I'm talking to you, I'm thinking about like how many times do you have little newborns where they'll put a bow on the head and pierce the ears immediately to make sure that everyone identifies this baby as a girl because as an identifier. Like it's such a horrible thing if somebody identifies this little 6-month-old as the wrong gender, because what does that mean? They want to embody and train what femininity is through aesthetic and like physical adopting of symbols to the rest of the society, because we are taught to engage with little girls immediately differently, all of us. From the compliments that you use, to the way that you handle them, to the way that you handle their emotions, to what you expose them to how you explain things, you know, even ideas of like food consumption, how much you eat, what you eat, when you eat it, in what way. And don't, like on a first date, you never have food that looks unattractive. Like you're not there eating pasta. Like I remember being told you're not supposed to go and have pasta that's going to splash around everywhere, and no, order sushi, something that hello that you cut up and you put in your mouth. And no, you know, on my first day with my partner, I remember I was so nervous and excited to finally go on a date with this person that I ordered like just a little salad thing that was easy to cut up with my knife and fork and to eat, because I didn't want to look weird. But what I really wanted was like a cheese board with like meat, charcuterie and bread and stuff. And I was like still so young. I think I was 24, and I was thinking like, okay, I'm not gonna like do that. I want to just make sure I don't want to fuck this first date up. Maybe on other dates, I wouldn't have thought so badly, and pizzas, I would have eaten it with my hand. But this one meant a lot to me. So I like fostered that energy. And here he came sitting in front of me, and he's like, oh, you want the salad? Okay, cool. I'm going to have the cheese plate with the meat things and the bread. And I was like, you know, and the whole time I'm thinking, man, I just want to like take some of his food off his plate and eat it. And like, I can't believe I just want to just take this. You ordered what I wanted. Aslan, we could have shared it, or we could have both had it, and it's fine. Why is it okay in this moment for you to have it, but not me? And I was having this like existential debate in real time while I'm on the date in my head. And no, Lisa, you're so stupid. Why didn't you just fucking order what you wanted? Why are you sitting here eating this? It's so annoying.
There's also like, especially in like the dating, and maybe like, oh, you should meet this guy, your aunt's neighbor's son, you know, maybe something will happen. Especially in that setting, there's always this another kind of like ways not to be is not to show how intellectual you are.
Oh my God, yes.
Or how ambitious you are, or how career oriented you are, or how successful you are. If you've already like, you have a career and you're working and you're making a certain set of money, or you've been promoted and you're on this track. There was also this thing of like, you don't want to intimidate men by appearing to be successful and ambitious, because then you'll scare them off. So that's another way that you're supposed to like cower kida into yourself and kind of dilute your achievements or your desires, your ambitions, your accomplishments, so as not to look bigger in life than the man that might be your partner one day, or the man that you're trying to attract in a long-term commitment, or even just the men around you. So there was always this like, listen, really don't talk about work so much, or like, don't say this thing, don't say that you meet. Like, I used to be a journalist, so I would meet a lot of like important people, but I remember being told like, you don't have to say that you interviewed this like minister or this like CEO of this company. And that's too, it's as if you're taking up like a bigger or like a higher position in society.
Okay.
And that is intimidating to men, or it could make you seem unattainable, and you want to seem attainable and kind of cut down to size so that you're like manageable.
Yeah. I mean, all of this is also just assumptions, right? Like the men might not be intimidated by that, but there's an assumption that it is, and therefore you're controlled based on that assumption.
But their assumptions, like our parents are altered, like their assumptions and advice to us came from experience.
Yeah.
So I think where we then shifted things was realizing that like society has changed, and both men and women's expectation of their roles and what that means are changing. So that was like, that's where confrontation started to happen with, for me at least, with my parents. Listen, you know, like, I appreciate what you're saying, but it's like society is changing, or like there are men out there that would appreciate that, and that's what I want. I will be this way. Like, that's where the conflict started.
Mm-hmm.
I actually didn't have that experience of being told to like what I'm gonna metaphorically call dimming my light for men. But actually my father was very proud of the breadth of knowledge that I had, that I absorbed from his conversations and what I was exposed to, and that I was very intellectual, and that I could carry conversations with men and women much, much older than me when I was very young. Like, I was having geopolitical debates by the age of like 11, you know what I mean? And he was very proud and happy to have that, but it was always about how I express, and never being combative or confrontational. And always, it was more about like, whatever it is that you want to be and you want to do, and you can do whatever you want and whatever you set your mind to in the world. And I see you could be the Secretary General of the United Nations, Elisa. Like, he had that belief, but at the same time, it was like, do that, but don't speak your mind too much, and don't piss off anybody, and don't like bruise anybody's ego in the way that you're behaving or you're communicating. It was more
like the diplomacy of expressing yourself.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But that's another contradiction. I agree with you on that also. Like, even though there was like this dim your light and don't be so kida kida, at the same time in the home, it's just us, there's no one else around. It's like, you have to make your own money. You can never trust men fully. You have to be financially independent. You have to work your ass off. But I think those contradictions and paradoxes are so common in the way we're raised, even, and we talk about this more often, but around shame, around pleasure, around intimacy, you know, like you can't, don't touch, no touching, no one touches you, and then you get married, you're like, touch, be like wild, be, you know, suddenly. But I feel like that's a lot of the ways that women learn to navigate the world, and, you know, balancing both, and being this way in this context, like reading the room and figuring out when, instead of just being a certain way in all situations. I mean, I'm sure some people can do that and embody that a lot better. But for me, I had to like learn how to do that, because what I was taught is, in this context, we wear this, we say this, we do this. In this context, yes, be powerful, be confident, be ambitious, be shafi. In this context, if you're trying to like nab a partner, then you have to be a bit more like, more graceful, more like dimmed, more. It's all those little balances and all that juggling we have to do throughout our life. I think that's what femininity used to mean.
Yeah, the contradiction you're kind of pointing out is actually who we're taught to be in public, and then versus who your parents really want to raise. Like, they want to raise a strong daughter who's independent, who can take care of herself, who can fight back if needed. But society expects them to raise a good daughter who's quiet and polite, and who serves, and who gets married, and who fulfills all the roles. And so you kind of are doing all of that, but as the receiver of it, it's incredibly contradictory.
I was going to ask you, like, we're talking in the past tense, so obviously we've both gone through processes of like redefining of whatever that means for us, as also society is changing, and like the younger generation is pushing a lot more boundaries than we did and redefining it in their own ways. So now, what does it mean to you? Or like, what was your process of redefining that?
I don't think I ever went consciously through a process of like redefining my feminine identity. What happened, I think, more was that I was redefining it along with the recognition of parts of myself that felt true. And things I didn't want to hide anymore, or things I didn't want to shift anymore, and realizing that actually I felt uncomfortable with ways that I was appeasing other people, and that the ways in which I was taught specifically to appease men and dance around their egos hurt me or put me in situations that harmed me deeply. And I didn't want to do that anymore, to be honest. And I also realized that I had started my career in my early 20s in a very male-dominated finance space. And so if I behaved in what was conventionally like expected to be a feminine way in that space, I would then be the recipient of a lot of unwelcomed advances and attention. And
sexual harassment.
The word is sexual harassment, but also like dismissive kind of behaviors. You know, we'd go into a meeting with a VC, my business partner and I at the time, and we're both young women in our 20s, and we think we're having a meeting, and we're so excited to be taken seriously with these people that we're, you know, with. And we leave the room, and the first thing that they turn to each other and say is, "Babe, who are you going to try to sleep with first? I think I could get the redhead. Who do you think you could get? You know, do you think she'd hook up with you if you did that?" And I only know that is the case because I was close to somebody else within the company who heard those conversations, you know? And later on in my career, I was actually in a serious relationship with a VC who not only like shared the space with me, but actually also exposed me to what would happen when I would leave spaces.
Yeah.
And the conversations that would happen. And eventually I got to this weird middle ground. I did have a lot more male friends, so I knew how to navigate the world of men that were in my generation, not the appeasing of egos of older men, but more like the bro and the tech bro culture. And I could kind of mask and shift into what was needed to be recognized as a non-threatening woman.
Yeah.
In that space. People let their guards down and showed me what they were thinking. And I'm saying all of this because where I was starting to redefine what it meant for me and my feminine identity is when I realized that no matter what I did or how I behaved, those thoughts were always going to be in the minds of other people. And I was never going to please anyone. And actually behaving in the ways that I was taught did not protect me from anything.
Yeah.
So it didn't serve me at all. It was something that not only was exhausting and felt inauthentic and took away a lot of my own identity and put me in dangerous situations, but it actually it didn't protect me in any way. It didn't raise me up to a certain level. It actually made me probably bring myself down in their eyes because I wasn't as strong spoken as I should have been in scenarios, or as self-believing as I could have been in certain scenarios. So I just realized well, if I can't help it, and either way I'm kind of treated differently because I'm a woman, then I might as well be my kind of woman. I might as well be my whatever it is to be Elisa and stand out and kind of own it. You know, I'm going to cut my hair, or I'm going to dye my hair, or I'm going to get my piercings, or I'm going to wear this, or I'm going to do things that often men could not do in that space also, but also do things in a way that was very unique to me that was then threatening to them because they don't know how to handle it. I'm not going to try to be spoken in this way. If I'm on a panel and I swear for an answer, you know, I swear, everyone's like, hey, yeah, haram. If she swears, oh my God, she can't. What is this? It's so vulgar for this woman. And then I got people coming to me and actually relating to what I said, and they didn't care that I swore, but they understand the substance of what I was talking about. And then that kind of validation came in where I realized, oh, this is all a construct. And here are all the ways that I've been playing into the expectations of that construct. And I wonder what would happen if I started stripping those things away. And for me, redefining the feminine was really just about defining who I was.
Yeah.
I have feminine in me innately. So it was more about just defining who I was, and that defined my feminine for me, you know, and that authenticity and whatever I bring to the table is feminine because that's who and how I am. It doesn't have to be defined within these like structures of it. So,
Yeah.
but it doesn't mean that that's what I define as feminine and expect you to fit into that mold of my definition.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? For me,
Right.
the definition of feminine today is whatever the individual woman defining herself
Mm-hmm.
is writing it as.
Yeah.
Like we write our own definitions, and in doing so, we are defining what the feminine
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, I agree. I think for me, like it was a subtle process throughout many years that then added up and accumulated over time. Like as I was learning to become who I wanted to be and like reevaluating some things that I didn't necessarily, values that I didn't hold true, that I let go of, or ways of being or looking that I shed along the way. And I always come back to like my parents with this because I feel like that's your first line of like meeting with society's expectations.
Mhm.
You know, there's so many other ways in work and with friends and in the street, وكل حاجة. But that's the first way out of wanting to protect you. At least that was my experience with my parents. And out of wanting what's best for you and to protect you and to like craft you in this way, that was the first line where you would meet or rub up against like society's expectations or what you were doing that was considered rebellious, even though you weren't doing it intentionally to rebel, but that's how it was seen.
Mhm.
And I think as I got older, I started noticing the contradictions between the most genuine ways that they raised me, like, you know, be powerful, be strong, say your opinion, even within like our small microcosm of like the household as a part of society, say your opinion. And it was important that they listened to me and I had a part in the decision-making process as a family and genuinely, you know, and do what you want and be who you want and all these values that they have. And then I started kind of listening to those a lot more and kind of ignoring the other stuff because I saw it as disingenuous
Mhm.
or not intentionally, but that it was very obviously coming from a place of the outside world, how it perceives me and then us as a family and then my future. وكده. For whenever I would get this, like, why are you doing that? This is not right, مثلا. Why are you this way? I would be like, actually, you are this way. Like, you're pretty stubborn and you're pretty strong-willed and you're pretty determined. And so I'm like you, like, we're not so different. It's just that the time that I exist in with the expectations and the ways that I can be now in this new era of life are so much more or so much different than what you could be. So that's the difference. Like the core of independence, confidence, determination, ambition is from you. And so that's kind of where it would be harder for them to fight back. And it would be like, oh, that's not what we meant. Or like, well, that's too bad, you know? And it's too bad that that's what you meant. And I remember like one of the early ways that I met that was like the idea of, مثلا, my first job, I was sent to write something somewhere out of Cairo. So I had to travel. And it wasn't super okay for me to travel alone at that time, even though I had started working. So I was like in my 20s. And there was a battle there of like, my صحش, يعني, like, we're okay with you doing this, but what are people going to say? And maybe it's dangerous and maybe it's this and maybe it's that. And I came back to the same point of, but you spent so much money putting me in like a very expensive university in Egypt and making sure I get a good education and telling me that I should not study literature, but instead study journalism because that's more practical and you can like get a good job and then all of these things. And now that's what that means. That means I've been assigned to go somewhere on this trip and I can't take you with me. Like, I'm an adult. I have to go and face these things alone and you can't have both. Like, that's the foundation you built and I'm just going to take it and run. You can't now hold me back and restrict me. So that's how it came about for me.
That's like such an interesting way of seeing it. And I think you're so right. A lot of the conflict is like, Thyme, we wanted to raise you like this, but we still expect you to operate within the structure that we operated within. But the structure has changed.
Right.
And actually the conflict is not implementing what they taught you. It's just how far that's taking you in this new structure.
And what does it look like in the modern world? Now, what does it look like? If we're going to, like, in this context, talk about your relationship with your parents and what you're, like, fighting them on or whatever, like, as a early 20s or as a teenager, وكده.
Or in your mid-30s. I'm still fighting my parents on things daily.
A lot of that conversation can be like, this is what I want and you can't tell me how to live my life. كده. But it can also, like, I feel like the earlier parts of that conversation should be like, what is society like now? What are things like now? What is acceptable now? Keep them updated with what's happening in our world so that they understand the context we're in, because they're raising us based on the context that they existed in, which is so irrelevant. And in this way, I think for us, I don't know exactly what it's like right now to be like a 20-something-year-old woman anywhere in the world, not just in Egypt or in the Arab world. Like, I don't really know. So I look at the changes that are happening in the conversation, in the labels, in the discourse of things that we didn't say, like the divine feminine, or feminine energy and masculine energy, or the clean girl aesthetic, or the soft girl, or the soft life, and the baby girl, which is like this very almost like infantilized version of like what a young like schoolgirl almost, that look like making its way back into the aesthetic. I can comment on those things conceptually, but I feel like I have to say first, like, I don't know. Like, I need now someone younger to tell me. That's why I'm on TikTok, not an ad. But I feel like I get a lot of that. I get exposed to some of those new terms there because I'm in my 40s. So like, that's something that we know from season 1. So now I feel like, oh, I don't really know what that is like. So I don't want to judge it. I can critique it or give an opinion on because I know language, and I understand cultural changes. Do you feel distant from that?
I mean, no, I don't feel too distant from it. But we do have like a lot of the members of our team are of that generation, and I'm very, at least, exposed to the online debates that are going on. And one thing that I think the younger generation have is a very normalized culture of being outspoken about social injustice.
Yeah.
This is like a wave that came after I graduated school of students we always had students protesting. Usually it's the younger people who end up kind of being the first ones to be outspoken about this. But there's a global wave with social media of people feeling like they speak out against injustice, whether that's for their community or for others. And simultaneously, there's the widespreading knowledge and birth of these aesthetics and core. There's a certain like farmhouse core and ballet girl core and gothic core. What I find so curious is that both exist within the same world. And very often when women are online and they're talking about these different aesthetics, that's all they're talking about. They're talking about the aesthetic of a baby girl, or the aesthetic of the goth, or the aesthetic of the coquette and the slow life and the trad wife aesthetic. 1950 is the nice looking thing, the way I'm dressing, the corset I'm wearing, the thing. But they don't want all of the other elements tied to what those aesthetics like represented. So they want the baby girl aesthetic because maybe they think it's cute and they want to dress like you had these Harajuku girls, remember back? Like Japanese culture had Harajuku, which was very playful and dominant. And we didn't know when we adopted that aesthetic, when Gwen Stefani comes out with an album and a song about it, she kind of culturally appropriated it, but she didn't nobody knew like the birth of Harajuku culture and what it was really about. So we were adopting the look without understanding what comes with it. And it's the same thing now. Like the trad wife aesthetic is cute.
But it's not just an aesthetic. I think that's where I disagree with you. Sometimes there is just an aesthetic element to it, like the clean girl look or the mob wife. I mean, that's like the opposite.
Yeah.
Or the mob wife look. Yeah, that is an aesthetic. It's maybe like a makeup trend and maybe it's like an attitude or whatever. But I think where we need to be paying more attention is these things, they're finding their way into the culture. We have to question where they're coming from, because they then are turned into ideologies, like the soft life and trad life. We spoke about this in season 1. And it's not just an aesthetic. There are aesthetic elements to it, especially visually, to push it online to like a wider audience. But at their core, they're ideological. And that's where they are dangerous. And I feel like people need to be aware of those things, because if they are adopting just the aesthetic element of it, you might not realize that you're actually perpetuating an ideology that's very harmful or very aggressive.
You're totally
to
right.
women. And that's where I fear for the younger generation, because it's not like they're being duped, not because they're ignorant, but because maybe they are not aware.
That's exactly what I'm saying. They're not aware of what those things like contain within them that they're perpetuating.
Yeah.
And where the structure is different from when we were younger is that you simultaneously have women discussing their social rights and their needs for freedom and agency and self-determination in a way that wasn't normalized when I was growing up. But you also have the rise of these aesthetics that are going on. And so this is where I feel like if we're the old people now and we have the younger crew, and please, like, you guys contradict me if you think I'm wrong, but my understanding is if we go to them and we say, you don't understand the depth of what this aesthetic means, like ballet, do you understand the historical like oppression that ballet brought upon women and what it has, and you want ballet core? My bet is that Gen Z/Gen Alpha are going to look at me and be like, listen, it's not that deep. It's a makeup look. It's an outfit look. The structure of today's society is it's not that deep for the aesthetics, and they feel empowered enough and emboldened enough to stand up and say, this is not right. This is not okay. Sexual harassment is not okay. Like, they have that awareness.
They're also being like dragged along, whether they like it or not. We all are, you know, just them, the younger generation. They're being dragged along in these like global political waves that are happening all around the world, where like there's right-wing resurgence and the liberal left to all of that. Like, and these things fit into those larger spectrums that are then shaping global politics in our everyday lives.
I think now these terms like divine feminine, for example, it relates more to people because the concept behind these divine masculine, divine feminine is that there's more of an energy that's exuded or that you foster within yourself. And the idea is that everybody has both within them. And it's a balance of that yin and that yang. And maybe that terminology is like a bastardized version of yin and yang, you know, theory and philosophy behind it. But ironically, it continues to also perpetuate gender norms within those terms, because what energy that is in the divine feminine and what energy traits are like in the divine masculine also are just then defined in that way. And maybe it's a way that people are currently trying to like define, finding balance between different things, between leaning in and leaning back, and between relaxing and between, you know, being active and being productive, between receiving and between giving. And it's kind of like, I don't know, I see it as a little bit problematic because I do still believe that it perpetuates some of these expectations, as opposed to redirecting the conversation into you naturally flow. Your state of being, your energy, your desires, your capacities, like, are naturally fluid at all times, and they're constantly changing, and that should be okay. And so it's not about being in your divine feminine by allowing this, and you need to sit and foster this energy. I feel like the conversation should be more targeted towards like authenticity,
I agree,
without gender in it. You know, call me a feminist if you want to, but like like that. Simultaneously, though, I want to foster different things. So, for example, my current life, for the most part, is very like quiet, calm, quaint, slow life, very nurturing, not necessarily of my partner, but just like a nurturing energy overall. Like, it's very like mothery, like it's just very calm and comforting type of like energy. And I've found myself lately completely missing and actually wanting, like, I feel like there's a thing that's missing in me that I need to foster and bring out in me, which is like I'm describing it as like a power woman energy. And I used to almost be in that like all the time.
The Elisa that I used to know.
Yeah.
Like that I met initially.
The Elisa that was always in the like action-based, like moving and dominating a room and being on panels and speaking and socializing. And I've completely like separated from that. And I've gone from one extreme to another. But I'm trying to now actually find more balance without such rigidity, and just to allow that that's okay in myself. So understanding like, you know what, I miss being like sexy or like feeling really like empowered in my body as the person that I am. I miss feeling that empowering energy. And I call it sexy, and our society can call it like power woman, whatever. But so I'll do like a pole fit class, or I'll do like a fun dance class that's like a heels class with certain movements that connect me back to my body in a completely different way. And I seek that. And I also see that as feminine. It's not that that's diametrically opposed to like the quiet comfort
Yeah.
Right? But it is a different side of it. And to me, that's still just as feminine as anything else. And I still want both, simultaneously whenever I want them. Like those things ebb and flow.
I think one of my favorite words really is balance. I think for me, a lot of the things I seek in life and the ways that I want to live and be and in my relationships and friendships وكده I'm seeking balance all the time. And whenever I feel off balance or that a dynamic of a certain relationship is non-balanced, then I get really irritated. That's when I start to feel like injustice and unfairness in a very small way.
Yeah.
And that's what can really make me frustrated, and something is being imposed onto me that I didn't sign up for or that I'm not okay with. And I think for me, I don't fully relate to the labels of masculine energy and feminine energy as labels.
Mm-hmm.
What they mean, I get, because what you were saying, there are different components of what make us who we are and ways of being that we need to be able to tap into and align and be aware of how they're coming into play in our life and which of them we want at this moment and what can serve us at that moment that we need. That's where the confidence and knowing yourself and authenticity and power comes in. I don't necessarily like the idea of lean into your feminine energy means that you've been too masculine because you've been displaying these or having to embody these characteristics of being a planner, being very focused on logistics, being very pragmatic, being very rational, being very kida. So then the more you lean into your feminine, it means being more nurturing and being more caring and being softer and being taken care of by someone else. I'd rather not put those things as binaries and label both sides masculine and feminine.
Yeah, I'd rather remove the gendered thing. I prefer yin and yang, as a concept.
Or just look at the actual traits and things and qualities and ways that you're performing life and practicing, and then shuffle them around as you need. Because I don't like the idea of you're leaning into your feminine, meaning that you're being taken care of to the degree, which is by the TikTok trends that we see. I have no idea how to pay my mortgage. I just travel with my husband and he has the passport and I'm just gliding along the airport and he's with, what is that? Why are you being kidnapped? What's it's not okay.
Blink twice if you need help.
If you need help, give us a sign, because I think the extension of that, God forbid, if you're just being taken care of because you're leaning into your feminine in a marriage, masalan, or in a long-term partnership, and so you don't know how to pay your mortgage and you don't know what health insurance you're using and you don't know what car, مش عارفة إيه كده. What if something happens to this man that you're with? It's in a very pragmatic way, فيش حاجة اسمها كده. You can't not know what makes up your life, because that will make you very vulnerable. If you're in a healthy, loving relationship and you can let go, and hopefully you're both able to do that, both partners, not just one, in different moments, that's great. But what if that relationship turns toxic? What if it's not a healthy relationship? What if you're being manipulated? What if something happens to that person? Because those are the stories that our mothers knew and kind of tried to raise us in a different way so that we can be independent when needed and when we want to. كده. You don't want to be dragged along in life and taken care of to the degree that you don't know how to manage your life if you had to.
Yeah.
But you can say, this year, as my partner, or even my friend, Elisa, as my business partner even, I don't want to do the recruitment stuff. I can't be in that mode of hiring people and interviewing people or doing admin and legal. I need to focus on the creative because I want to. And can you allow me that space? Because 2 years ago, I did that for you. So that's the balance that I want to seek. And I hope maybe I would love to change the narrative in that way around those labels instead of I'm in my feminine energy. So I can't take the car to the mechanic. No, I do. What the?
Yeah.
It's okay. Just fucking go. Yeah, it's that's what, anyway. That's my take.
It's just a spot.
My take. Well, I come in peace, but that's just my take on it. I've been in situations, and I like to get a little bit even more personal, like in relationships where I felt like I had to embody what we would say are masculine and feminine energies, but what I just thought of as like, I have to do all this shit. Like, fucking, like, I need help, you know, like I'm exhausted, I'm burnt out. Like, that's not the relationship I signed up for. And not because I'm a woman and you're a man, but because as a human, I have needs and I need to be supported as much as I support you, and I can't carry this load by myself. So that's what it comes down to for me. It's not necessarily like, I'm so tired of being the masculine, you know, for me.
There's so many interesting aspects of like what we choose to adopt and what we don't. I remember having my dad's partner get upset at me once, 15 years ago. I mean, this is a while.
Yeah.
Because I stood up when a man had come to join a dinner that we were having. And when he entered, I stood up to shake his hand and say hello, as did the other men at the table. The only other woman was my dad's partner. And she stayed seated and she gave her hand in there. And she leans over afterwards. She goes, Elisa, a lady never stands. Elisa, how could you? And I was like, dude, that just sounds like rude. طيب شو أنا لا doesn't stand إنه خدي إيديك لأنه ليش؟ لأنه شو؟ لأنه she's a lady أو you know, when you go to the bathroom and like the gentlemen still stand up when you return, that's also a bit
sounds like the chair is moving.
And no,
because you have to go, like, it's embarrassing also. Just let me go to the toilet.
Just let me go pee and come back. وعادي. Like, it shouldn't be such a big deal that you're honoring my presence and my return. So in both ways, like this aspect of how men should behave or how women should behave to be men or to be women, for me, it has just never really made sense. And there's aspects of like chivalry culture that I adopt and embody regularly in my day-to-day life. Things that other people have always told me men are supposed to do for me. Things like walking in front, you know, of a woman going down the stairs. In case she falls on you. Walking behind a woman when she goes up the stairs. In case she falls on you. But you know what? I started doing that with my dad and my mom. I'll walk in front of them, I'll behind them in order to catch them, because I actually think there's some sort of logic there, and at least I can like cushion the blow. Or, you know, opening the door for somebody. It doesn't matter if they're a man or a woman or if I am, I'm going to open the door for somebody.
Yeah.
Pouring them a glass of water on the table when I notice that our glasses are empty. Sure, I'm going to wait there and wait for the guy when I'm thirsty to come to realization that I need water in my glass.
That's very true.
Or my girlfriend, or who's going to do, I'm going to just do that if I notice. It's just basic courtesy and consideration of others, which is
consideration.
Consideration. And men are taught consideration of others only within the context of gender roles and like usually wooing or status or something in those lines. Yeah. Women are taught that for everybody all the time. You're supposed to be, as a woman, super considerate of everybody. But in gendered situations, you have to like let the other man be considerate of you, and you cannot also communicate that consideration. I can't be like, yeah, I'm so thirsty, yani, please.
I wonder if anyone has water.
I wonder if somebody could pour me a glass of water. It's right there. It's not so difficult.
But I agree, like in a situation maybe where you're like on a first or fifth or whatever date with someone, and you're trying to like assess, is that person for you? And are they performing all the things that they want you to perform in this specific dynamic? I also clock it as a consideration, not as like, you didn't pull out the chair for me and make sure I sit down, and no, you're not a man or you're not chivalrous. I clock it as like, that's not very considerate of you.
Yes.
It's like exactly what you're saying, this consideration as opposed to performance.
Yes.
Are you innately, inherently a considerate person? Because if you're doing it just as a performance, that's going to fade. And then in our day-to-day life, on the long term, if you're not considerate, those things are going to disappear. You're not going to always be opening the door and pouring my water and pulling out my chair. And those things are also stereotypically done early on in like partnerships to woo, like you said. But what I care about more is being considerate.
Yes.
If you're a considerate person, you're going to do these little acts of service and care in thousands of ways throughout the day. And I will do similar ones in different ways.
Yes.
And that's where we can all live harmoniously.
Yeah, just be a nice person.
If we can change the labels of masculine and feminine to like considerate and balanced on one side and just being an asshole on the other side.
No.
I feel like that is a better binary than masculine and feminine energy for me.
Not that they were one is an asshole and the other is balanced. We just mean that like, reshuffle everything and then create new labels where you have a good, decent, kind, considerate, balanced person who's authentic or who's true or who's genuine. And then inauthenticity and stuff that, I don't know. Yeah, you're totally right. To be honest, I'd love to see like an artist, if anyone's listening to this podcast or like watching it right now and you can draw whatever the balance is, like what would you put in those
buckets?
In those buckets, and what are those balances? And if it's not a binary anymore, like this is also something that boggles my mind, is like the same way that computers operate with ones and O's, we are put in with this masculine and feminine, but like quantum computing is a thing. There's a way for all of the tech to work without ones and O's. They have 2s and 5s and 6s and 7s and all sorts of things. And for us, there could be so many different buckets with so many different categories of behavior that we can all try to find balance in between.
Yes. Quantumly.
Yeah, quantumly. Live in a quantum state.
Our director wants us to wrap up.
Okay, well, in one of the universes, we already wrapped up. And in another universe, which I think is going to be this one, we're actually going to end the conversation right here.
Yes. Thank you for listening to this episode of Sage Takes Time. Please comment, like, share, subscribe. Subscribe to be a member on YouTube and subscribe to our paid content version on Apple Podcasts for exclusive premium content, early episodes, outtakes, bloopers, all the things. Thank you for listening. Join us for next week's episode.
Yeah, and remember, the divine feminine is within all of us.
Yeah, tap that out.